Hello everyone, this is Dr. Tasadduq Hussain and I am ready with another lecture wherein we will be studying about the atomic orbitals and their shapes. I hope that you guys have checked my previous lecture which was on the Schrodinger wave equation, because we will be using Schrodinger wave equation to look at the shapes of the atomic orbitals, and we will also try to understand how Schrodinger's wave equation is useful in understanding the wave function, which is the radial wave function and the angular wave function. This lecture is going to be divided into two important parts. The first part will be dealing with the introduction, wherein I will brief you guys about the complete wave function, and then I will brief you about the atomic orbitals, then what's the difference between the wave function psi and the radial probability and psi square, and next we'll be studying the probability curves, wherein we will learn about the radial wave function and the angular wave function, which gives us the shapes of s, p, d and f orbitals. So moving on to the introduction part. So in our previous lecture we did study about the Schrodinger wave equation for an hydrogen atom, which looks like this, and this equation we solved for the hydrogen atom in polar coordinates. Now the same equation becomes like this, that is psi r theta phi is a function of these three, r, theta and phi. So in this equation, this r is called as the radial wave function, and this radial wave function depends upon this r. Similarly, we can say that this t, that is this theta, and this p, that's phi, both of them they are called as the angular wave functions. In this equation, this radial wave function, which is dependent upon the r, is independent of theta and phi, but it is dependent upon the r. Similarly, in case of the angular function, this t is dependent upon theta, but it is independent of r and phi, and this phi is dependent upon phi, that is this angle phi, but it is independent of theta and r. So the wave function psi is dependent upon the polar coordinates r, theta and phi. So r is the distance at which the electron is revolving around the nucleus in 3 dimensions, and theta is this angle towards the between the r and z axis, and phi is an angle wherein you can see it is moving towards the x-axis in the radial position. In simpler terms, we can say the complete wave function or the total wave function is a product of the radial wave function and the angular wave function. So this is complete wave function. So complete wave function is a product of radial wave function and angular wave function. The product of these two, that is the t theta and p phi, it gives the shape of orbital. So angular wave function actually gives the shape of orbitals, and this radial wave function gives the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus. The product of both of them is the complete wave function. This equation, if I label it as equation first, this equation can be written in another form also in terms of the quantum numbers. This radial wave function r, it depends upon the quantum number n, that is the principal quantum number n, and it also depends upon L, okay, the azimuthal quantum number. So I can say that this r, it is dependent upon two quantum numbers, that is n and L, that is the principal quantum number and the azimuthal quantum number. This theta is dependent upon the azimuthal quantum number and the magnetic quantum number, that means it is dependent upon L and M, while as the phi, it is dependent upon the magnetic quantum number only. So the principal quantum number gives us the exact orbit wherein an electron is located. The azimuthal quantum number gives us the angular momentum, while as the magnetic quantum number gives us the direction of the angular momentum. So all of them are also very important in this case wherein we are looking at the complete wave function. So now what I'm trying to write is the complete wave function in terms of the quantum numbers. So when I write that, this equation can be written as the complete wave function psi. So instead of the polar coordinates r, theta and phi, I'll write three quantum numbers n, l and m. And this equation becomes equal to, now since I said that r is dependent upon n and l, so I can write r, n, l, the two quantum numbers, and then I'll write t. So theta is dependent upon the azimuthal quantum number and the magnetic quantum number, so I will write two of them, that is l, m, and this phi is dependent upon the magnetic quantum number, so I will write p, m. So this equation is also complete wave function, but it has been written in terms of the quantum numbers. This equation tells us that besides the complete wave function, wherein we know that it depends upon the r, theta and phi in case of the polar coordinates, in a similar manner it also depends upon the quantum numbers, the principal quantum number, the azimuthal quantum number and the magnetic quantum number. Now since I have already told you that the equation that I have shown here is the complete wave function or the complete wave equation, and this equation is dependent upon the quantum numbers also. For principal quantum number, the values can be from 1, 2, 3, so on. Similarly, for the azimuthal quantum number, the values can be from 0 to n minus 1. That's, it can have values from 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. And for the magnetic quantum number m, we can have values 2l plus 1. Okay, so that means we can have values 0 plus minus 1 plus minus 2, so on, so forth. So when I try to use these values for different orbitals that we have, so if I say for example I have one s orbital, and if I try to solve this equation for one s orbital, in that case I know that the principal quantum number n is equal to 1 and the azimuthal quantum number l is equal to 0, and the magnetic quantum number, which gives the orientation of angular momentum, is also equal to 0. So in that case this equation becomes psi NLM, so NLM, so they are 1 0 0, so NLM are 1 0 0. It becomes equal to the radial wave function r and the quantum numbers that are associated with it, that is n is 1 and l is 0. Similarly, the t, l is 0, m is 0, and for p, m is 0. So this becomes the complete wave function for the 1s orbital. In a similar manner, you can write this for one 2s orbital or 2px orbital, 2py or 2pz orbitals. Also, we know that the complete wave equation or the complete wave function was derived from the Schrodinger's wave equation. Now, since Schrodinger's wave equation is a equation which is of a second order, so that's a differential equation of second order. So that means the Schrodinger's equation can have many solutions. So Schrodinger's equation can have many solutions for this wave function psi. That means we can get different values of psi. Some of these values that we obtain for psi from the Schrodinger's equation are going to be the imaginary values and some are going to be the real values. So the real values that we obtain are real values, while as the imaginary values are some of the values that are non-acceptable. The imaginary values of psi that we obtain from the Schrodinger's equation, they are not acceptable. So we don't accept the values that seem to be imaginary when obtained from the Schrodinger's wave equation. In a similar manner, the values that are real values, they are the acceptable values, and those values actually tell us the total energy of an electron that the electron has in a particular orbital. The acceptable values, these real values which are acceptable, are called as the eigenvalues, or sometimes we call them as the acceptable wave function also. So this is the imaginary values or the non-acceptable wave functions, and this is the acceptable wave function. So we always take into consideration only the values which are real values, and in other words we call them as the eigenvalues. And one of the important characteristics of this eigen or the acceptable wave function or acceptable eigenvalue is that it has always to be continuous. So this value has to be always continuous. That means when we plot this value in a three-dimensional space, this value has to be continuous. There should be no breaks in the continuity, or there should be no breaks in the plot. And also, along with being continuous, this eigenvalue also should be normalized, or its function has to be always normalized. So these are actually the characteristics of these eigenvalues, or the acceptable values. They have to be continuous and they have to be normalized. So normalized means that they always have to obey a relation wherein within the integration limits of minus infinity to plus infinity, that means the two extremities, the psi square dr has to be always equal to 1. Okay, so this dr is a small volume for which I am applying the integral from minus infinity to plus infinity, and it always has to be equal to 1. So this is the characteristic of eigenvalue that I am mentioning here. So in other words, we can say this psi square dr, this is basically the probability of finding an electron in this area. So the probability of finding an electron in this area is represented by this psi square r, and this probability of finding an electron gives us the idea or the concept about the atomic orbital. So in my next section, I'll tell you what the atomic orbital is and what is the probability of finding an electron in that orbital. Now, since I mentioned that the product of, or the multiplication of this psi square and the small region dr, this always gives us the probability of electron around the nucleus, and this probability of finding an electron around the nucleus can be represented by E, the capital E. So in other words, I can say this E is basically equal to psi square into the volume of since now I am trying to find this electron probability in a three-dimensional space. So this is basically a three-dimensional space. So when you try to find the probability of an electron in a three-dimensional space along the all axes, that is x, y and z axes, so in that case this is going to be a sphere. So now from mathematics we know the volume of a spherical shell is always equal to 4 pi r square. So when I'm trying to find the probability of an electron around the nucleus, I have to take into consideration the volume of the spherical shell also. If I consider the distance from the center of the nucleus to the end of this shell to be r, and this dr is the thickness of that shell, is the thickness of that shell, in that case what is going to happen is the integral values are going to be converted from r is equal to 0 to r when the distance is r, to the maximum distance. So I'm considering distance from this position to this position. At this position r is going to be 0, and at this final position on the top of the shell the value of r is going to be equal to r, and it has a thickness of dr. So in that case I can say the integration, when I apply from the limits from r0 to rr, then this E is going to be equal to psi square 4 pi r square dr, and this gives us the electron probability in the region from this position to this position. So the probability of finding an electron from this region r is equal to 0 to a space region r is equal to r is going to be equal to this equation. So this is the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus. So from this equation we can also deduce the concept of the atomic orbital, because so far we have been trying to understand from Bohr's model until the Schrodinger's model. We know about the shells, and the shells are the different definite energy levels wherein an electron always stays. But in case of orbital, what we are going to do is, if I represent this electron by a small dot and this dot, and I consider that this small electron, it has also, as we know, that it has a wave nature and it has a particle nature. Because of its wave nature, electron can be found around the nucleus at any place. So we can say electron has wave nature. Because of this wave nature, this electron can be found anywhere around the nucleus. That means the probability of finding an electron around this nucleus in this space is never going to be 0. That means I can find electron at any place within this region, right? The maximum concentration of these dots, that means the electrons, would be closest to the nucleus, and it will go on decreasing as the distance of the electron from the nucleus increases in all the directions. So in other words, I can say that the probability of finding an electron closer to the nucleus is going to be more, and as we move away from the nucleus, the probability will slightly decrease. So the maximum probability is going to be closest to the nucleus. So maximum probability, that is probability of finding an electron, is shown by E. So the maximum probability is going to be at the nucleus, and minimum probability is going to be at places away from nucleus. So as we move away from the nucleus, the probability of finding an electron is going to be decreasing in a three-dimensional space. So this three-dimensional space, wherein we are trying to find out the electron around the nucleus, this three-dimensional space is always called as the atomic orbital. And what is an atomic orbital? It is basically an electron charge cloud. It's basically an electronic charge cloud, or it is the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus. Now we have to understand the difference between the wave function psi and the psi square. So this wave function psi that we have been using so far, it is not significant, and the reason for that is that it never represents the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus, because this equation or the psi itself wave function can have a value that could be positive as well as a negative value. But in real terms, the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus can be 0 or it can be positive, but it can never be negative. The probability of finding an electron around the nucleus can be positive or it can be 0, but it's never going to be negative. So it should never have a negative value. So that's why in case of this psi, we sometimes obtain a negative value for the probability of an electron around the nucleus. That clearly says that this psi itself has no significance. But if we try to square the value, that is psi square, that psi square becomes very significant because it gives us the probability of finding an electron around the nucleus. That clarifies the difference between the psi and psi square. I think it will become more clear when we try to do the electron probability distributions or the electron probability density for different types of the atomic orbitals.
The second part of the atomic orbital and their shapes will be discussed in another lecture. I hope that you guys enjoyed the lecture. If you did enjoy the lecture, then please subscribe to our channel.